For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with limited trainings.
Hello, and welcome to the SnowBrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of SnowBrains. And in May 2007, I was invited to try out for my first ever real guiding job. It was for RMI on Mount Rainier, Washington. One of our avalanche forecasters in Tahoe was also a climbing ranger on Mount Rainier, and he needed his car driven up there. So I gladly obliged. I piled all my stuff into his car for the summer. Skis, boots, mountaineering boots, all the gear I could think of. When I arrived, there were 18 people trying out for only 3 spots. I was completely overwhelmed and outgunned. I brought all my stuff up to Washington. I was broke. I had more gear than I could carry, and I had no idea how I was going to get myself back home with all my crap. This uncomfortable situation hyper-focused me. There was only one solution: beat out everyone there and get that job. Somehow, that's exactly what happened. Getting that first guiding job on Rainier catapulted my guiding career to places I could have never imagined. Thanks for borrowing me that car, Andy. Today's episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Escape to one of Club Med's more than 20 mountain resorts in Europe, Japan, Canada, or China, where you find world-class skiing and snowboard terrain, exceptional service, and endless adventure. With their all-inclusive packages, you'll get everything you need for an unforgettable ski vacation, all taken care of. Lift tickets, ski and snowboard lessons for all ages and ski levels, gourmet meals, lively après-ski activities. Visit www.clubmed.us, call 1-800-CLUB-MED, or call your travel advisor today. My guest today is Mary Kate Buckley. She's the president of Jackson Hole Mountain Resort in Wyoming. Hello, Mary Kate. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm happy. Thank you. I went skiing today, so I'm happy. Did you ski today?
Yes, I got out for a little bit this morning, which I try and do basically every day.
That's great. So how many days might you have this season, or do you count?
Well, our app counts for us. And so I think I'm at maybe 22 days so far. I missed 3 because meetings and work commitments just got in the way, but on a roll.
I love that. Okay, so you ski every day. I love it. So we're getting along famous.
Try to. Yeah.
So do I. I really do try to. So to start off, I think myself and so many people are interested in your story. So do you mind just telling us your quick and dirty life story? Maybe in 3 minutes, but if it goes long, we're totally okay with that. I do this with everyone I hire at SnowBrains. And I find it's a really cool way to connect with people, learn where they came from and where they're headed.
All right. Well, that sounds great. I was born in Messina, New York, which is on the Canadian border.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the third of 4 kids, and then grew up in Wilton, Connecticut. Grew up in a family focused on sports, so played every sport growing up. Went to the College of the Holy Cross, where I was an economics and English major.
And where is that college? I didn't find it.
Yeah, it's in Worcester, Massachusetts.
That's right. Okay. I know I did see that. Continue. Thank you.
Yeah, a city school, which was a great one.
Nice.
Then following college, I worked in advertising in New York City, and then changed when I accepted a job with the Walt Disney Company Consumer Products Group.
Wow.
I made that change when they offered to pay for me to get an MBA at night, and I had been focused on getting an MBA, and that just seemed like a good offer to have someone else pay for it. So I went to NYU Stern at night. When I completed my MBA, I moved with Disney to Hong Kong, and I lived in
Wow.
Hong Kong almost 5 years.
Whoa.
That became a base as I moved. I went over in a finance role and then moved into a licensing role, and then moved into business development and took on a number of assignments that led to postings in various countries within the Asia Pacific region. So that included almost a full year in Japan, working on creating a retail distribution system. And then I had 6 months in India, working with franchise retail stores, 9 months in Indonesia. So it was a really great way to get to see the region and get deeper into a country, and gave me a very solid grounding in retail. And then I moved with Disney to Paris as the head of business development, and that was for Disney Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I worked in a variety of new business initiatives there, and then was recruited to move to Nike in Portland, Oregon as the global head of business development.
Wow.
During my time in that role, I led business development across Nike, but we e-commerce enabled Nike.com. And then they asked me to step in and be the GM of that business. And during my time at Nike.com, we launched a number of the facets of the website that are still operating. We developed Nike ID, and it was a really robust business experience in that we got to experience so many different facets of the business. They then asked me to be the general manager of Latin America and Canada, and Nike divided the company into 4 regions. So that was one of 4 regions. And then later they asked me to take over the Bauer Hockey Company, in addition to running the region. And then during these years, I was in that role as the GM of Latin America and Canada for 6 years. But I also at that time became involved with starting a vineyard in Tuscany. And so I asked for a transfer. I know.
It's amazing.
It's
I don't know how you had time.
Non-linear career path for sure. So I asked for a transfer to Europe, and then was based in Amsterdam as the head of apparel. And then I left Nike in 2009, really to focus on getting the vineyard off the ground. And I had purchased a house in Jackson in 2004. So I was traveling a lot, but I was based in Jackson. And at that time, I was able to fulfill my lifelong dream of being a ski bum. And so I worked with the vineyard full time and traveled quite a bit during those years until I accepted the role as president of Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And that was in 2018.
Well, a huge congratulations to you. That is a ridiculous resume. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I thought I'd done enough research, but there is definitely some holes in my knowledge. That is incredible. And one of the only
nonlinear.
one of
Definitely nonlinear.
One of the only things quips I thought of when I was listening was doje, which is thank you in Cantonese, I think. Did you learn any languages as you did all these travels?
Yes, I learned, at every stop along the way, I learned basic communication. Accent was always an issue for me, but learned enough to get around and I had an assignment in China, Hong Kong, and Greater China for a few years. And so I could get by with business Mandarin.
Was that Mandarin or Cantonese?
Yeah, we learned Mandarin.
You learned Mandarin.
And then, I cobbled together a little bit of Italian with an accent that's offensive. And I studied German early on, so I can get by in a lot of languages, but none of it with any grace.
Very impressive. So shishay instead of doje for the Mandarin. I was in China for a month once, and it's the most beautiful place I've ever been. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Well, we're going to get back into some more of that detail. I'm just overwhelmed right now. I wanted to start this interview with basically just telling the folks about Jackson Hole, because not everybody's been there, because the numbers are very impressive. So I'll just rattle these off. So Jackson Hole has 2,500 acres of inbounds terrain on 2 mountains, Après-Vous and Rendezvous. They have a vertical drop of 4,139 feet. The base elevation is at 6,311 feet. The summit elevation is 10,450 feet. Their uphill capacity is 19,771 skiers per hour. And the backcountry train is insane. So this is what I really love doing with my friends there. They have open backcountry gate system that accesses about 3,000 acres more than the inbounds terrain. And Jackson Hole averages a ton of snow, which is another reason why I love going there. They have 458 inches of snow, annual snowfall each year. And also they have 225 acres of snowmaking coverage. So just very, very impressive. It's one of my very favorite places to ski and one of the 3 places that I'm based in North America. The first questions for you are about the new ownership. So Jackson Hole was recently sold to new ownership. So could you tell us a little bit about these new owners and what's going on there?
Sure. But first, I just want to correct that we made the announcement in August that our long-term owners, the Kemmerer family, had made the decision to sell the resort.
Oh, thank you.
And so we announced that August 4th, and we announced it to our employees. We gathered our leadership team together in a room, and our current owners, Jay and Connie Kemmerer, were there, as were our 2 new owners, Eric Macy and Mike Corbett. And so we wanted to give our employees the courtesy of hearing it first, not on the rumor mill, and then hearing it directly from ownership, having the opportunity then to ask whatever questions, because they were going to be our front line for the rest of our employee base. It was the decision to sell that we announced, and the deal has still not closed. That is because we are using the opportunity of change in ownership to apply for a new U.S. Forest Service permit. There are only 2 occasions when you can get a new 40-year permit. The first is the existing permit term, expires, and for us that would be 2037. The second occasion is when you change your ownership. So we are using the change in ownership, applying, and it's a pretty arduous process. We are very, very close to the end, and so we will be finalizing, that transaction probably within the next month. But we've been following the path of the application and ready to close when we get that new permit.
Well, that is really exciting. Well, congratulations and good luck on that permit. I'm sure any federal government permitting system is very complicated with a lot of ins and outs. So hopefully you guys are close on that. And the Kemmerer family who you mentioned, they'd owned Jackson for 31 years. And I think the only other owner that I could find was the original founder, Paul McAllister, who I think founded it in 1963. So only the 3rd set of ownership, which is pretty interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so I guess, my next question is, I guess in my mind, I guess I have to think, well, this is not finalized, but it sure looks like it's going that direction. It looks like a pretty sure thing.
It will be finalized within a matter of weeks. It's just a process.
Okay, so you guys feel good about it. So I guess what on everybody's mind is, why did Jackson Hole not sell to Alterra, the owners of the Icon Pass or Vail Resorts?
And yes, this will be a sale, but the Kemmerers were very thoughtful about everything they've done with the resort from the day that they bought it. And so it wasn't for sale, right? They asked Mike and Eric to step forward so that they could convey ownership to them. And so, over the years, we have been approached by all kinds of different ski operators, companies and private organizations. And, just with the communication, hey, the day you sell, keep us in mind. So hardcore discussions, but just flattering that there would be a number of people who would be interested in buying. And so the Kemmerers, I think, always knew that was an option. But, they have their rationale for buying the resort initially was to give back to the state of Wyoming. Their family had been long established here, and they sold their business in 1985 and wanted to reinvest in Wyoming. So they're very conscious of a commitment to the state of Wyoming, very conscious of the role that the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort plays in our community. And so they were just very thoughtful in what their legacy would be. and all of the improvements that they've made, all the values that they've instilled, they wanted to ensure continuity. And so they count Mike Corbett and Eric Macy amongst their absolute two best friends. They're two board members. And so they've had input into building all of our plans. So continuity and continue fostering of those, family-oriented values was a top priority for them.
That's fantastic. So, and you kind of touched on this, but why was it so important for the Kemmerers to keep Jackson Hole independent and not part of a consolidated system like the Altera and Vail, Icon, and Epic passes?
Well, we think that is one of the things that makes us special. And, as a company, Jay Kemmerer, the owner, is the chairman. And then Connie, who is the oldest sister, has an office adjacent to ours on our floor. She's in all of the meetings. There's just a real presence of the family. We see them out in the hill. They're here throughout the summer. And it's really the objective to continue to have that family atmosphere that was so important to them. And they're really proud of everything that they've done. You sell to a new owner and, you're not quite sure how your pride and joy, this treasure will be treated. So they just wanted to make sure they selected two families. And Mike and Eric have been clear that they are making a multi-generational purchase. Between Mike and Eric, they have 5 kids and they have grandkids now, and they are committed to passing this down through their families as well. And we think that family ownership and our independence is one of the distinguishing characters here at JHMR.
And I feel like it's a Wyoming thing as well, kind of the old West, that cowboy, independent, libertarian sort of going to do what I want to do feeling. And so I am really glad to see Jackson Hole stay independent. And I got to ask, how hard did Altera and Vail push to try to acquire Jackson Hole?
There wasn't a push, and it wasn't, I won't say Vail and Altera, a number of different ski operators and beyond, people who are not in the business. There were frequent requests to introduce us to someone from somewhere who was happy to buy our plates. And so I don't think there was a hard push, but just knowledge that if we made the decision to sell, that there would be a lot of willing purchasers there.
There'd be a lot of interest, I'm sure. And so,
Yeah.
I am so curious. I know it's very early, and I mean, technically it hasn't even sold yet, but what are the plans of the new owners? Do they have any fun changes in mind?
So both Mike and Eric have been on the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort Board of Directors. Eric joined in 2014, so he's been on the board for 9 years. Mike joined in 2021, so he's been on a couple of years. So they have seen all of our growth plans, our capital investments, and we plan those out 5 years. And so they have blessed them. They have publicly said there will be no change. They intend to continue investing in our capital plan. And we all, we know that we can lay our plans out for 5 years at a time. And all of a sudden there might be a priority or something that will rearrange our capital plans. But they are fully focused on the next investment of installing a replacement for sublet lift next year. And so, they've publicly said no change. They plan to continue investing. And because they've been on the board, we absolutely believe that. And then Jay Kemmerer will be selling, the Kemmerer family is selling the resort. And then Jay Kemmerer is going to come back into the partnership with Eric and Mike. And so there again, I think that gives us a sense of there will be continuity with the current vision.
That's great. And one question I forgot to ask is, why did the Kemmerers sell, and why did they sell now?
Well, they have owned the resort for 31 years, and there was not a next generation. There was no family succession plan. And and there were 3 of the same generation. I've already mentioned Jay and Connie, who are based here, but then a third sister, Betty, lives in Sun Valley. But there was, through the years, The next generation have had various jobs here, but have not shown that, the commitment and the interest that's really required. And so in the absence of a succession plan, they just look to what we all feel is the absolute next best thing to select Eric and Mike, who feel like they're part of the resort. They've raised their families skiing here. Eric has been here full time since 2009. Mike recently retired as CEO of Citibank. And so he is now here as a full-time resident. So they're locals, they're insiders, they're board members, they love the place. And that says, in the absence of succession planning within the Kemmerer family, we all feel like this is the best that we could possibly ask for.
Sounds terrific. And I'm curious too, I had forgot to look up, how old are the Kemmerers? Is this kind of a retirement for them? Does it make sense for them in sort of a life progression strategy?
Yes, they are. They're aging, and Connie, who is the oldest, is looking forward to retirement. She just had her knee replaced this past year, and her retirement will just be, she'll be on the hill probably a lot more.
That's great.
Whereas, right, but she's still working with us all the time. I think they have earned the retirement after all that they've done. So
definitely. And tell us a little bit about, if you're comfortable, about Mike and Eric, the new owners, please.
Sure. Eric had a career in New York, a career in finance, and he worked with Jeffries & Co., an internationally recognized investment banking firm. And so he has a lot of financial background, and he's done restructuring, stabilization, growth of private and public companies in a myriad of different industries. And then he relocated with his family full time to Jackson. I want to say it was 2006. And he's been doing real estate development here. His wife, Dana, is very active in the community. She's on the board of Search and Rescue. She's on the Hill all the time. And then they have 3 children that were raised skiing here. So that's Eric. Eric and I joined the board of directors on the same day in 2014. And for years, our employees would see Eric and his wife over the Christmas holidays. If we were ever shorthanded, they'd be bussing tables in the cafeteria or, helping out wherever we needed. And Eric has played a big role in a number of different transactions that JHMR has done. And we always say, how can we ever thank you, Eric? And he'll say, I just want a red jacket. That's all I want. So we love that. We love his great love for this place. We really think that's so important. And then Mike was CEO of Citibank and worked at Citibank for 38 years. And it's, I think, one of the largest banks in the world. He raised his family skiing here. His kids had all of our best ski instructors. And he is an avid outdoorsman, loves fly fishing, a great golfer, downhill skier. He and his wife, Donna, reside in Wilson. They have 2 married children, 3 grandchildren. He's still traveling quite a bit. He was on the USSA Board of Trustees, and that was his commitment to the ski industry for many, many years. So we know that he'll be a supporter of our alpine events. And I think the 2 of them are just really looking forward to being part of the team. And when we had our introduction to our leadership meeting, we had a reception afterwards so everyone could meet them, and they were the last 2 to leave. And so they're just really looking forward to being part of this team and carrying forward the legacy of the Kemmerer family.
Incredible. Wow. You have a very strong memory and attention to detail. Thank you for all that. That was very detailed, more than I thought we were going to get. Well, let's jump back into your background because I do think it's so impressive. There's a couple more questions I'd love to hear. So you covered who you are and where you've been and what you've done very well. And if I understand, you were 11 years each at both Nike and Disney. And you said what your roles were and where you were based. So we can move from there to what did you learn working at Nike and Disney at these high levels that helped you here in Jackson Hole?
all three are beloved brands, and the
Mhm.
passion for these brands, I think, is very similar. And you'd be surprised, the statistics at Disney, how many couples take their honeymoon to Disneyland, right? And,
Oh, wow.
how many people have tattooed swooshes on their calves, or,
Yep.
there's dedication to these brands and loyalty. And I think we see that same dedication, loyalty, passion for the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. So when I think of JHMR as a brand, I think that there are expectations of that brand, and people just have the highest expectations of any interaction with our brand, and that makes us need to raise our game and ensure that we are delivering just the best experience that is expected by our loyal guests.
And you're, in a lot of ways, you're considered an outsider in the ski industry because of your previous experience at Nike and Disney and wineries and all this fun stuff. And why do you think being an outsider it has been a good thing for you?
So I joined the board of directors in 2014. So
Mhm.
I had 4 years as a board member, with visibility to our operations here, and taking a very strategic, gaining a very strategic understanding of our company, of our community, of the industry. So I think those years as a board member helped me to prepare. And then I've been in my job for 6 years. So I've really been around for 10 years. But
Mhm.
I was an outsider to the industry when I first came in. And I think that may have helped me to look at things from a very different perspective. And all of our team here, we know what we do, and we many of our practices we have been employing for many, many years because we feel that they're the best way to do things. So coming in with a different perspective, I may have had a different lens on how we approach our business, approach our guests. That probably helped me a little bit coming in. But again, I came in as an outsider, and I was not brought in, this was not a turnaround situation. This was an exceedingly well-run company, a very successful operation, had a team with so much tenure, so much experience. And, so I was brought in really probably relying on all of my business development experiences, just trying to figure out the next chapter and identify how we are going to continue to grow into the future.
Terrific answer. So, and I guess I should preface that you were an outsider, and obviously now you no longer are that because you've been in this game for 10 years at a very high level. And so thank you for all that. And one thing, this is a little bit off cadence here, but I wanted to make sure we hit that. If I understand right, you were the corporate officer and co-founder of the Women's Leadership Council. And could you tell us more about that?
I was a corporate officer and on the executive committee at Nike. And that, I think, gave me visibility to all of the governance of a major public company. And then there were two female corporate officers. And so together with Mindy Grossman, we recognized, that there women within Nike just wanted another avenue, a network of support. And so we co-founded the Women's Leadership Council, and created a number of initiatives such as identifying high potential female talent, coupling that high potential talent with very senior male executives. And we felt that men could gain as much from their interaction with up and coming female executives as women could from male executives. We would foster women in their careers, open door, encourage women to go for specific positions, give very stark feedback. And it was a successful network from a corporate perspective. We had a talent pipeline to ensure that the number of women coming up through the pipeline were gaining experiences and would have a shot at at promotions and higher levels of executive service.
Well, thank you so much for that. And it's neat, hearing your experience, Nike and Disney and more. And I'm guessing, what were your hours like at Nike and Disney compared to CEO of Jackson Hole? Well, I'm guessing
uh,
Nike and Disney were some long hours. You were telling me those positions and those places, and it must have been nuts.
yeah, and at Disney, there was a saying, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't bother showing up on Sunday.
I've
So
heard
that's
that
a
in
huge,
other places too. That's hardcore.
I know. And then when I was based in Asia, we had an official six-day work week, Monday through Saturday.
Ooh,
And the employees voted to work 6 days a week every year. They would put it out
wow.
to a vote. And then Nike, especially, well, when we were founding Nike.com, it was really 24/7, and everyone wanted to join the team. And we would tell people, if you join this team, you probably are not going to be approved for vacation for the next year. And yet we still had people pass. And that's pretty stark, but that was the reality, because we were always just, trying to work as fast as possible to keep up with the changes. And then when I worked at, when I, was head of Latin America and Canada, and then even my time in Europe, there was just a ton of travel. And so I would go to South America for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. And so that really eats into your personal time. And so, being here in Jackson, I'm where I love. It's where I want to be. But the role itself is 24/7. And I can get a phone call in the middle of the night that, one of our guests hasn't come home, or, something's happened. And so I am on duty 24/7 here, and that is 12 months of the year. So it may not be the intensity, that I saw at Disney and Nike, but when it's intense, I think the consequences are so much higher here in this position.
So maybe a little less intense and like over a year-by-year basis, but the acute intensity can be even more so, it sounds like,
Exactly.
which might render my next question a little obsolete, because it's, is the ski industry a bit more relaxed since it's a lifestyle industry? But I am still curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it is more relaxed, I think, but I think our employees and our team, our sense of obligation to deliver a great experience. We know that so many people are taking maybe their one vacation of the year to come have a week with us at Jackson. And so our sense of obligation to deliver is high. But I do think that we're all in the atmosphere that we want to be. We chose to live here. We chose it for the lifestyle. And so it would be a little bit more relaxed, I think, than, say, Disney or Nike.
Mary Kate, my understanding now is that, yes, the ski industry is more relaxed until you get to the highest echelon where you are. And then it probably is still kind of intense, or I should say maybe more intense than I thought it was. So, as the curtain gets pulled back a little more on these, CEOs in the ski industry, I am starting to see, oh, okay. So, in my imagination, but I mean, you do sneak out and ski every day, and I do love that. So, I don't know if that's considered relaxed, but I think that at least have some lifestyle quality of life value there. That's undeniable.
Well, that's my opportunity to get out and, see our guests, experience the conditions, check in on the employees. And that's the highlight of my days, to be out there where the action is.
I love that. And because I think, to me, it's so important to, as a CEO, that you're getting out there as much as you can, because that's the product, right? Is you can get out there and see what's going on. How are the lift lines? How are people, the employees, how are people reacting to everything? Are we getting lifts open on time? And that you're out there experiencing that firsthand, I think brings a ton of really valuable feedback directly to, like, from the source directly to the CEO. And that's not something that everywhere can acquire.
Right, exactly. My office window looks out at the tram, and it's the best view in America, I think.
It is a spectacular view. I love. I've been based part-time in Jackson since 2017, and that is never going to change. It's really important to me. If I could convince my wife to move there, we would certainly do that, because it is such a special place. So let's jump in. Speaking of lifestyle and quality of life, I do love this founder of a winery in Italy thing. Italy is, very close to my heart, even though I haven't spent that much time there. It's just so special. The culture, all of its exports, I love. And when I have spent time there, the people are just spectacular. I went to Italy for a month in 2018, and these locals just took me under their wing and showed me around in the Alagna region, what is it called? The Monte Rosa, for a month straight, every single day. It's just incredible. I love the place, the people, all of it. I digress. So you founded a winery in Italy. How did this happen?
I ask myself that all the time. And anyone who has that idea, talk to me first. But no, it was, I met my Italian partner actually skiing in Portillo. And
Cool.
I was there on a probably 3-week trip, while I was working at Nike from our Portland headquarters. And my good friend is married to the owner of Portillo. So I would always pop into Portillo and get to stay there just on a short-term basis. And then my partner, Roberto, was the director of the racing department for Lang and Rosignol boots. And he had been doing that for 30-something years. He custom made ski boots for World Cup racers in his own factory, made them for every racer from Ingemar Stenmark through to Herman Meyer, Tommy Moe, you name it. Over the years, I think 79 Olympic medals were won in his ski boots. And so our conversation started around athletic footwear. And he wanted to know everything about Nike footwear. And I wanted to know how much, how they created certain materials. And he was a partner in a winery at that point. And following that trip, he sent me a pair of ski boots. And then I wound up going over to visit the winery. And as he was making the decision to exit that. So with my career in business development, it seemed like the ultimate new business to start with a piece of land and plant and create a brand, create a product. It sounded like a lot of fun. It is not necessarily a lot of fun. It's really hard. But years later, we're doing very well. We now have a third partner in our venture. We started with 25 acres. We're up to 100 acres. We just got a rating from the Wine Spectator of 95 points for one of our wines. We're very pleased with that. But it's a long,
congratulations.
yeah, but it's a long and hard road. Again, it was born probably of the ultimate new business opportunity.
It might be obvious because it's, farming and all that is so challenging. I've been involved in that. My family grew almonds and walnuts in California. I tried to never be around during harvest. And when I was, it was brutal. You get roped into the harvest for a week or more. Oh my gosh. So when you say it's harder than you thought it was, tell us about what were those hardships?
Well, you're absolutely right that harvest is manual labor. When I go, I'm only a field hand. I can contribute very little except for manual labor. No, the challenge is the wine industry itself. And there are so many different wines and so many great wines. And it's hard to break through with a new wine when there are hundreds of thousands of them. So that's where we have had our greatest challenge. We now have a great new national importer for the U.S. and we're distributing in I don't know how many countries around Europe and Asia. But it takes time to prove yourself. And there's so many different options. The competition is what makes it so challenging.
That does make sense because there are so many wines, as you mentioned, out there. And you mentioned your exports. What country buys the most of your wine? Like, what's your biggest export country?
Surprisingly, Switzerland. And and to get started, my partner would drive along the World Cup tour. All the years he had spent on the World Cup, he had gotten to know restaurant owners and hotel owners. And so out of the back of his car, he would, bring in a bottle of wine. And so we developed a foothold in Switzerland. And then they just have unlimited budgets, it seems. So they have been great customers of ours, and really all the towns along the World Cup tour.
That is genius. And I wonder if that was your partner's strategy from the start, because why build new partnerships? Why build a new contact list when you already have a strong one? I wonder, is that something that you folks talked about before, that strategy, before you started the winery?
No, the strategy was we just must sell, right?
I
Anyone
love it.
will buy. That's what we need. There wasn't a lot of strategy to start because you need to get your product into the marketplace. And so once we have the product out there, the reorders come in, and then more and more people experience it, more and more people are looking for it, but you just need that first foothold. So strategy was just sell what we could.
Which is a sound strategy when you're starting out, that's for sure. And what might be unique about your winery?
The winery itself is somewhat unique. My partner was inspired by Bordeaux and the wines of Bordeaux. And he made Alberto Tomba's ski boots, and they are very, very close friends. And so when he traveled around with Tomba, every door would open. You know, Tomba had the reputation of being a partier. And so the best wineries in the world would open their doors. My partner actually grew up as a farmer in the Dolomites, apple farms. And so he was looking at all of these wineries through the eyes of a farmer. And it was Bordeaux, the dense planting system that really attracted him. And then he prefers the Bordeaux varietals. So our planting system is a little bit different from what you would see in Italy. And then our winemaker is actually from Bordeaux. He's a specialist in Saint-Emilion. And so we have a Bordeaux winemaker, Bordeaux style planting, an American partner, a little bit international. I think the winery itself, that's what makes us different. And then right now we have 3 different wines, and we will be introducing a 4th next year.
That's spectacular. And just for our listeners, Alberto Tomba is a legendary World Cup racer. I believe his specialty was downhill. He was a big guy, ski racer. And you mentioned Portillo earlier. I don't know if I might have failed to say that. That's in Chile, and then Bordeaux is in France. And I guess that we're going geography right now. And your winery's in Tuscany, is that right? And is there something special about Tuscan wines? It seems like there should be, because Tuscany to wine almost feels like Champagne, the Champagne region of France for Champagne.
Well, for years, Tuscany was known for the wines from the interior, the Chianti region, Brunellos, as well as from the Piemonte region. But we are on the coast of Tuscany. We can see the Tyrrhenian Sea from our field. And so, it is, I think Tuscany probably produces more wines. Our region is home for the super Tuscans that use the Bordeaux varietals and are famous more for Bordeaux style blends.
Very interesting. So you said there's 3 wines you're making. Could you tell us which wines they are and which is your favorite?
We currently have a wine called Ritasso. It's 100% Sangiovese. A wine called Lorelot, and that's 100% Merlot. And then a super Tuscan blend of 5 varietals, and that is called Pervalle. And I think Pervalle is my favorite. It's the hardest to make. It's more complex. It's actually at the lowest price point, and it's just great with everything.
And I love that it's called Super Tuscan. That's enough for me to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well,
hey, just a correction for later. Tomba was a tech specialist.
He was. Well, thank you. So he wasn't a downhill guy. He was more of a slalom guy.
Yeah, a very stocky built guy, but slalom and GS.
Well, I stereotyped him badly then because he was so big. I figured he was a downhill guy for sure. So thank you. I appreciate that clarification. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med, calling all ski enthusiasts. Elevate your winter getaway with an all-inclusive experience at Club Med. The resorts in France, Switzerland, Italy, and Quebec offer a seamless blend of breathtaking ski adventures, locally inspired cuisine like fondue, and lively après-ski delights, all included in your package, so you can focus on conquering the slopes, indulging in the flavors, and creating unforgettable memories with your loved ones. Visit www.clubmed.us. Call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to craft your ski dreams. So let's jump into the Icon Pass, because the Icon Pass is a big deal. It changed the game. It is obviously a big competitor to the Epic Pass, which is Vail's product that if listeners don't know, you basically pay somewhere around $1,000 for these passes, and they work in many, many places. And Icon Pass came to Jackson Hole a little while ago. So I guess the first question, how long has Jackson Hole been associated with the Icon Pass?
Our inaugural year on the Icon Pass was the 2018-2019 season. So this is our 6th year participating.
That's great. And so that was your first year as CEO or president as well. So that's pretty cool. And so I'm sure you were a big part of that. And how do you think the Icon, or let's just say, how has Jackson Hole changed since joining the Icon Pass?
Well, and actually, the decision to join a multi-resort pass product was made before I came into my role. The contract was signed, but I was the first one to experience it. I think Jackson Hole has changed since joining the Icon Pass in that we are better prepared to manage the potential number of visitors. And we've made a number of changes to our operation. The first year that our locals refer to as the Icon year was also a year when Jackson had the best snow in the West. And there were a lot of resorts that didn't have much snow at all. So we were not prepared for the crowds that would flock here to use their new Icon passes. And we weren't prepared. And so it resulted in a disappointing experience for our locals and for our long-term loyal destination visitors, and then for our Icon pass holders just as well. And so since that year, we've made a number of changes that help us to be a good partner resort to Icon. And we focus on daily capacity. We use a lot of historical data to forecast visitation. We look at different groups of visitors and forecast when our season pass holders will be out, when our destination visitors, when Australians will be here. We look at how we're going to drive visitation through our events like Kings and Queens and Rendezvous Music Festival. And then we set a daily limit. And we also look at our conditions. So we set a daily limit and we manage to that limit, and we will manage by, stopping sales of our day passes. So that cap helps us to deliver a better experience because we are managing to our capacity. Lift wait times are reasonable. We try and keep them at 5 minutes or less. We make sure that there's a seat in restaurants for everyone, parking spaces. It's just a much better experience for us and for our employees when we can manage the total capacity. And then we've introduced a reservation system for both our Icon and Mountain Collective pass holders. And so they're still able to use their passes here, but they just have to make a commitment in advance. And so there's a cap on that. We've capped the number of season passes that we sell, because that's the group that is really hardest for us to estimate when they're going to be with us. So we've made all of those changes to the way we manage our ticket sales. We have also invested on the mountain to be able to accommodate more people. We've expanded lower tram line and installed snowmaking to enable our expert skiers to have an exit off the upper mountain without having to rely on a trail that's, the beginners and intermediate skiers are using. We've doubled the width of trails like Ship's Prow, where there used to be choke points, and we've identified choke points and just tried to make them bigger, widen them to be able to accommodate more people. This year, we relocated and opened the Bear Flats Cafe, which has been closed since 2007. It's positioned at the base of the sublet lift, and the menu is just grab and go fare that's intended to refuel our guests who just want to lap sublet all day. So we're eliminating the need to go to the base area for a bite and then having to get back on a base area lift. Our promotions are designed to attract guests to our slower periods. We just had our ski and blue jeans event a week ago and saw, a ton of people who probably wouldn't have been with us at the beginning of December otherwise. And then we've moved our Rendezvous Music Festival to the beginning of April. Previously, it was mid-March. We have incentives for season pass holders to not ski 10 holidays during the year. So we have really methodically analyzed our skier visitations and tried to accommodate to spread demand out in terms of seasonality, in terms of time periods. We have a attractively priced afternoon pass when we know a lot of people leave the mountain, and we feel that all of these tools help us to create a much better experience.
Holy schnoogles, that was a hell of an answer. Thank you so much. I'm very impressed the thought and the energy that's gone into that. And I am also really grateful for your frankness in the beginning, saying, when we first had the Icon Pass, we were a bit overwhelmed. So thank you for all that. And I guess just as a nerd, I'm so curious, how many in your equations there, and when you say that you limit how many people come a day, are you able to share how many people come per day or limited at per day?
Yeah, no, we don't share that, and it varies by day. So, the beginning of the season, if we have 2 lifts open, it's going to be a much lower number than when the mountain is fully open. People are able to ski off piste, and we have a group that meets twice a week, and we look at it from every perspective: how the mountain is skiing. Do we have any events? What are snow conditions like? Do we really think the locals are going to come out? And it's not a science. So we try and refrain from using language like we guarantee a better experience. Last winter, we had a weekend where we had 42 inches in 2 days. And sure enough, we were off with our estimates. Our locals knew enough not to go in the backcountry. And so they all came to the resort, and we were well over what we had hoped for, but we also delivered 42 inches of snow. So people were okay with that. So it's not a science. We are committed to this and committed to managing capacity as we go forward. We think our guests and our employees really like it. Employees like being able to deliver a great experience and know that they're working with satisfied guests. And then probably most importantly, when they take a ski break, they get a lot of skiing in.
I was there for that 42-inch storm, and I can confirm that it was an awesome, good time. And maybe there was a little bit longer lines at times, but it just didn't matter. There was plenty for everybody. That is very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And so I guess one other quick question is, I am so curious about this equation, and I love that you also had to factor in Australian summer vacation when they're going to come too, because they can have an impact. I guess just a more broad question is, whatever you can share about this equation, I'd love to know. But just how complicated is this equation? It sounds like I'm picturing Einstein with his hair all over the place, gibbering, spattering across a chalkboard.
Well, because we sell our lift tickets in our day passes in advance, we have a good estimate of how many people are coming by the day. We know how many season passes we've sold, and we rely on historical data to know when more out of towners are going to be in town with us. We get all kinds of data. We get weekly reports from airline bookings, lodging bookings. We have a great community here, and everyone shares their information about their hotel bookings. So we piece it all together, and then we lay on top of that weather and the percentage of the mountain that's open and how it's skiing, sort of thing.
I should totally move on, but the nerd in me can't handle it. And who's in charge of this equation? It really is Einstein on a chalkboard, just insane calculus. I hope it's not just one person, because this sounds like, I don't even know what analogy to make to it, but it sounds like such an important piece of your puzzle, and there's so many variables and so many numbers that are being added into this. It sounds impossibly complex.
I mean, like everything we do here, it's a great team effort, right? And so we have guest service and finance and marketing, and then mountain operations weighs in, and we look at our the patrol's weather forecast. And marketing is key, because we will sell out. And that is the worst if we haven't been able to communicate to people that we are sold out. And I think a few other resorts have adopted a reservation system or the practice of limiting capacity. And so increasingly people are aware that when they book their hotel, they should make sure that they can get a lift ticket as well. Our lodging community is committed to, as people book their lodging, they will remind them, make sure you can get a ticket. So it's an absolute team effort, and the decision is made by a team, whether or not we should continue to sell or we should just call it a day.
Well, we should move on because I could do a whole podcast just on this equation. It's so intriguing to me right now. And because I also can foresee that with every forecast that you make for every single day, there's a record of that. And then you cross-reference that against what the actual numbers were. And then you kind of have your plus minus, like we were above, below, and then you're just slowly refining. But how refined can it really get? Because every year is so different. I love it. Okay.
Not a science.
Yeah, no, but it's like so many of the sciences, not an exact science. I really didn't like it when my dentist told me that though the other day. Dentistry is not an exact science. I was like, God damn it, really? You're about to drill. Okay, but anyway, so I assume Jackson Hole is probably a bit busier than it was before the Icon Pass. As part of why we have these mitigation standards put in place. And what can you share about how Jackson's visitation numbers have changed over the past decade or so?
Well, the highest year on record for skier visits was our inaugural Icon year, 2018, 2019.
Quick timeout. I think that season, was it unlimited for Icon Pass holders? And then it was the next season you made the change to 5 to 7 days.
No. We, our inaugural year, we participated on both the premium Icon Pass, 7 days unrestricted,
okay,
as well as 5-day base pass with blackout dates. And, so we've never been unlimited.
Okay. My mistake. Thank you.
Yeah. But, the following year, we worked with Icon to create a pass that actually was more expensive if you wanted to access Jackson Hole and Aspen 5 days with blackout days. So that pass is the base plus, and you have to pay more for that base plus pass to get the access for Jackson and Aspen, and a few other resorts have joined that base plus right now. So it just costs a little bit more. The base pass was included with a season pass for so many of those Alterra owned Icon resorts. So if you got a season pass, say at Steamboat, that base pass just threw in 5 extra days at Jackson. And so that's why we thought that there should be a premium to access Jackson and Aspen. That was the concept underlying the base plus pass.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And then to sort of revert to my question that I interrupted you so rudely is how might have your visitation numbers changed over the past decade or so?
So our highest visitation on record was the 2018-2019 season, inaugural Icon Pass year. And, since that year, this is 6 years later, the following year we shut down early for COVID. And so the numbers for that year are distorted. The year following that, we operated with COVID, and we greatly reduced the number of daily visits. That's when we introduced our reservation systems. And that's when we started limiting tickets, having advanced sales. But because we were running our lifts, our Gandhis, and the tram at limited capacity, the tram was running at a max of 25 people versus the 100 norm. That year, our numbers were well down. So it's really the last 2 years that we look at. If you want to compare, and we have been building our number of skier days. And last year was our second highest number of skier days on record. And, people didn't feel it. People didn't feel it because we've been able to spread people out, because, we limit those tickets, because we've been able to modify our resort. And in the early days, we went to the folks at Alterra and said, we are in this, we want to be a great partner, but to be a great partner, we still have to be a great mountain, and just give us some time to work with our infrastructure so that we can accept the demand that people have to ski here. So we have been working on it. We're going to continue to work on it. We don't see changing our capacity management approach. We think it's really successful.
Well done. Yeah, because last year I was there quite a bit and it felt normal. It felt like it didn't feel crazy at all. And I guess my last question on the Icon Pass is, are you folks able to share how the Icon Pass works financially with Jackson Hole? My understanding is that when a person uses their Icon Pass at Jackson Hole, Icon Pass pays Jackson Hole for that visit.
That's correct.
Simple. Okay, great. Well, then we can move on because I love I want to rewind a little bit, or maybe a lot of it, to the founding of Jackson Hole. I kind of get a lot of grief for being a Californian when I visit Jackson Hole, and which makes me love the story of the founding of Jackson Hole. Because if I understand correctly, I'm reading on the Jackson Hole website and other places that Jackson Hole was founded by a Californian, and its color is red because that Californian went to Stanford University. And so I'm curious, if you could tell us a little bit about the founding of Jackson Hole.
The founder of Jackson Hole was Paul McCollister, and he had a career in radio advertising, went to Stanford, and came to Jackson. I think he and his family were living here. And he connected with another local, but a long-term Wyoming local, Alex Morley. And in 1963, they bought what was a Girl Scouts camp at the base of this mountain and decided they were going to build a ski resort. And it's really fun as you go around the mountain. There's certain trails that reference that period. We have a little terrain park called Campground, and that's where they camped as they were trying to figure out where they would put their trail system. The famous story of Corbett's being named as they were touring around trying to figure out where they could, access the bowl. So there's a lot of great history about those early years as they tried to plan how to run this ski resort. They opened, I think they had some service on Après-Vu with maybe just a double chair. And then their dream was the tram. And McCollister had seen the tram during his travels around ski resorts in Europe. They hired Pepe Stiegler, who had recently won a gold at the Olympics for Austria. They hired him to be the head of our ski school. And originally, I think the concept was to position this as a destination for alpine racing. And so the final race of the first year of FIS's existence was here at Jackson Hole, won by Jean-Claude Keely. So
Wow.
They got it off the ground and had a fantastic vision and managed it through, they were the only owners prior to selling it to the Kemmerer family in 1992. And they operated it as a family. Their son, Michael, was the general manager of the mountain. Their daughter, Holly, ran human resources. I mean, it was a real family resort.
Thank you for that. That is so cool. So yeah, again, I love that Jackson was essentially founded by a Californian. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to wear that on my sleeve this season. But do tell us more about this Corbett's Couloir story, because I don't know anything about it.
Barry Corbett's was a filmmaker, I believe. And he was, they were skidding around the top of the mountain and they looked over into Corbett's Couloir, and he famously said, someday somebody's going to ski that. And so that's how his name is associated with Corbett's Couloir. And then it was years and years later, a ski patroller was standing on the cornice looking in, and the cornice broke. And he thought, well, I better go. And so that's, Barry Corbett is the namesake for that couloir. And
then it was first skied by accident by someone essentially falling into it when a cornice broke. I love that. That's what it took to make the first descent, which makes sense because if our listeners don't know about Corbett's Couloir, please look it up. It's terrifying. It's got this big cornice, and there's only usually one way to get in there, and it's really challenging and steep. And once you're in there, it's not too bad, but boy, the entrance is will scare just about anybody. Doesn't regardless of your level of skiing. So, well, thank you so much for that story. I had no idea. That's very helpful. A really interesting, unique perspective and just fact about the Jackson Hole, Teton County, Jackson, Wyoming zone is that I think it currently, or at least very recently, or the last data I saw, had the highest income disparity in the USA. And the definition of that might be, when I just looked it up today, it could also be described as a gap between the rich and poor, and income inequality, wealth disparity, wealth and income differences, or a lot of people just call it the wealth gap. And I want to read another quick quote from the Jackson Hole News and Guide, and this is from 2021. The average per capita income in Teton County soared to $318,000 in 2021, a leap analysts called a truly breathtakingly mind-blowing increase that put the community far above any other county in the United States. And again, that's from Jackson Hole News and Guide. So the first question is, does Jackson Hole, the ski resort, struggle to find employees due to the income and disparity and rent issues occurring in Teton County?
Yeah, well, and I think we are like any other resort in any other mountain town. There is rising costs of housing and costs of living. So much of that was exacerbated during COVID, when people were fleeing cities and looking for remote locations from which they could work. And the demand for housing was tremendous during those days. And what we saw here in Jackson, where there were people who were wanted to live in Jackson and would buy housing that had previously been workforce rental housing, and they would buy them as tear downs and displace a number of employees. So I think it was exacerbated by COVID and the movement to the mountain towns during that period. And so we are conscious of that, and we have been prioritizing investment in employee housing here at the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. This year, our largest single investment is in building 3 new buildings that will, when we open, hopefully next month, we should be able to house an incremental 84 employees. That will bring us to a bed count of about 300. So we can accommodate 300 employees. That's about 22% of our workforce. And then we already have our sights on the next investment in employee housing. We are currently pitching the county for approval to build housing at Stilson, which will be right next to a transit center on land that we've recently donated to the county. So our goal is to continue in investing in housing, just to give our employees some cover. But we do have so much tenure with our employees, and we really have very high return rate for so many of our departments. And we can have return rate in the 70 to 80% range, which is really quite high for a ski area. And we feel that we have to, it's a function of trying to give our employees some sense of career path, trying to help out with housing. We have addressed compensation over the past few years, but any mountain town will tell you that it's really cost of living is rising, and that puts huge stress on our employee and the workforce.
COVID really changed the game in mountain towns, and I say all sort of resort towns all over the world. And because I even see that in Argentina. So if I was listening well, I think you said somewhere around 300, over 300 beds now, or employee housing, and that was 20% of your workforce. And by doing quick maths, is that right? You have somewhere around 1,200 employees?
We are about 1,800 employees.
Terrific.
So, and then we plan to continue investing in employee housing.
Well, that is so cool. I'm actually very impressed. There's that many employees that work at Jackson. 1,800's a ton. So well, that's fantastic. They have all that housing. And so you said there's 3 new buildings. Could you tell us where those are?
Sure. They are located in town, behind Target. The Kemmers purchased land there when they bought the resort in the early 90s. We built our first three buildings there, and they opened in 2014. So I think we currently have about 99 employees there. So we constructed on land that we already owned. So there's 6 buildings that are at a bus stop and have access to the bike paths. And they really are for seasonal workers. 2 years ago, we opened housing on the Village Access Road, and those were 2-bedroom townhouses for our longer tenured employees. And then we just have a number of different employee housing facilities throughout the valley.
That's terrific. And so if you have a goal in mind for of the 1,800 employees that you have, how many of them, what percentage of them would you like to have in employee housing?
Well, I don't think we have a percentage in mind. And we currently have an initiative to try and educate our employees on how they can secure their own housing, how they can get loans, how they can make those investments. And so employee housing has typically been, a way for seasonal workers to come in and get a foothold in the community. Our 2-bedroom townhouses are for longer periods of time, for longer tenured employees. We actually have land in Idaho where we would look to build a number of houses that our longer term employees could occupy. So we just are looking at any opportunity where we can add to the community housing supply. And it is a community-wide issue. Last year, the community voted to invest $80 million in taxpayer dollars to build housing to accommodate the workforce because we're short that many beds. I think it's 6,000 employees are short. And so we are just taking this as a private owner and trying to fund our own investments.
As a ski resort enthusiast, especially in the USA, I really appreciate that you folks are doing this. This is great. It seems to be one of the only viable solutions is just getting employees in beds because it can be so challenging. And I do know because I am boots on the ground, as you know, I ski quite a bit in the Western US, and a lot of folks that I know don't, all over the Western US, they'll live in their car for the winter when they're working for ski resorts. So it can be really challenging. And you mentioned Idaho. So a couple questions here. How far is that drive over to Victor and Driggs, and then it's up over Teton Pass? And how many of your employees do you think make that commute over Teton Pass from Idaho each day?
The time really depends on the time of the day, the time of the year. But there can be horrific traffic over the pass. It should take maybe 35, 40 minutes with open roads, but you go at commuting times and it can take significantly longer than that. I think maybe 10% of our employees reside over the pass, maybe more. Not really sure about seasonal workers versus full-time. We don't have great data on that. But transportation is the other critical issue facing our employees. And it's been a real pain point for our employees. Another one of our focuses is to invest in public transportation. And in 2020, we partnered up with the county, the town of Jackson, as well as Teton County, Idaho. And we applied for a federal transportation grant. We got a build grant from the federal government of $25 million. That has been matched locally. And so the total money earmarked for investment to improve local transportation is $43 million. Last summer, we saw the first of 13 projects, which was to extend the bike path. And as you know, our bike path system is probably the most extensive in the US. We rely on bikes in the summer when traffic can be bad. So part of that federal grant is going to fund, I think there's 6 new buses, dedicated park and ride areas on the Idaho side, new pathways. and Jackson Hole Mountain Resort donated more than 5 acres of land at Stilson to be dedicated for park and ride spaces. And then next year, 2024, part of that money is going to build a new transit center that will accommodate people waiting for buses. There's an initiative, if we're able to get housing at Stilson, that we might be able to house some of the town's bus drivers because they're crushed for housing as well. So we are looking at really the 2 pain points for our employees and our community are housing and transportation. And we feel like we're doing our part to try and alleviate those pain points.
That's terrific. And I did fail to mention for our listeners, the big reason people commute from Idaho is that the cost of living is much more affordable on that side of the pass. And the one thing that stuck in my mind was the new transit center. Where might that be located?
So the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort owns Stilson, which is
and tell us what Stilson is, please, just in case, because okay. I forgot to preface that one too.
Yeah, Stilson is right now it's a parking area at the intersection of Highway 22 and 390. 390 is the road that takes you to Teton Village. So when the Kemmerer family bought the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, they created a master plan, not only for the mountain for development, but for the development of Teton Village. And when the county was approving the master plan, they put a cap on the number of parking spaces in Teton Village, no more than 2014. And then they required that the Kemmerers find off-site parking. And so the Kemmerers bought 99 acres of land at Stilson at that intersection. They divided part of that up into residential lots and sold some of those to our employees at a discount. And then at that time, they donated 8.5 acres of that land to Teton County to be developed into parks and recreational ball fields or facilities, also for the good of Teton County. And then we retained the number of parking spaces that we thought would accommodate the overflow parking spaces. And then at that time, they created the Teton Village Association, which is a municipal organization that manages parking and transportation for all of the commercial owners in Teton Village. So it's that land at Stilson that the Kemmerers have owned and has been master planned since the late 90s, where we are proposing putting employee housing, thinking that employee housing is best positioned next to a transit center so our employees can rely on public transportation, get cars off the road. Right now, the county is doing a survey of the community of the priorities in terms of what parks and recreational ball fields would be desired versus tennis or pickleball courts or playgrounds. And then we want to make sure that we can accommodate wildlife because it is an active wildlife corridor there. So we see that as an opportunity to develop some of the amenities that the county desperately needs.
And just to be clear for our listeners, Teton Village is where Jackson Hole Mountain Resort is located. And if you're a local, people don't say, I'm going to Jackson Hole. They say, I'm going to the village. And if you're really local, you can just say, yo, dog, I'm going to the Ville. And so
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not quite there yet, but I could at least say village. So thank you for all that. That is great. I love the strategy of having employee housing at or near bus stops, transit centers, where people can get public transportation easily. So we're running out of time here, but those 2 last quick things. So thank you for all that. That's fascinating information, and I love all those numbers. So Teton County is where Jackson Hole Mountain Resort is located in the town of Jackson, Wyoming. And why do the rich flock to Teton County? The reason the income disparity is so big because we have ultra wealthy people living in this county. And why do you think that is the reason?
Well, I think everyone wants to live here. It's just such an amazing place. And we will cite the access to the national parks and the U.S. forests. There's so much. We're surrounded by public land. Only 3% of this area is developed for residences. Everything else is under conservation. That is what's, driving up a lot of prices as the demand increases. It is an income tax-free state, and so it's very attractive for people who want to live here and declare residency here. And just the overall lifestyle is something that I feel helps people. There's a sense of being grounded here, a sense of common priorities. A few years ago, I went on a heli ski trip to Alaska, and I was the only one from Jackson, and there were people from every other ski area. And it was so funny that they all had jokes about Jackson Hole. I mean, everyone had a joke about Jackson Hole. And my favorite was, how do you know someone's from Jackson Hole? And the punchline is, because they'll tell you. And rather than being insulted, it was like, yes, that's true. We all love our identity. It means that, we've made this move. We've left our lives behind for the most part. I mean, there's a small percentage of people who are lucky enough to be born here, but everyone else chose to live here. And we chose to live here, frequently came for the first time to because of the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And then, like me, I came for the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, and then I was astonished by how phenomenal summer was. But then everyone stays for the community. And so there's a shared sense of value for the outdoors, shared sense of community. It's the community in America with the highest nonprofit contribution per capita. So there's just this sense of giving back. And so I think it's a great place and a great lifestyle, no matter your income level.
Fantastic answer. Just for posterity, I do want to include and accentuate what you mentioned about the tax situation. Because I just wrote into Google, why do the rich flock to Teton County? And the first thing that came up was the New York Post, maybe not the most reputable place, but it says the most obvious explanation for the wealthy migration to Wyoming is tax incentives. The state collects no personal or corporate income tax and has one of the nation's lowest sales tax rates, 5.3% compared to 8.5% in New York. But I do agree with all those. It is a very special place. And the very last thing I want to speak in here before we run out of time is I see signs that say Jackson Hole is run on 100% wind power. Can you tell us about that? How Jackson Hole runs on wind power?
Sure. And we define the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, the culture that we desire, by 4 values. And the values are: we are safe, we are green, we are fun, and always an ambassador. And those are the values by which our employees aspire to operate every day. So green has been long in our heritage. The National Ski Area Association awards the Golden Eagle Award every year, I think since the mid-90s. And JHMR has won that twice out of the 500 plus ski resorts under consideration. And most recently, 2020, we were nominated but didn't win when we switched to 100% green power. And we made that move. We made the move to participate in our local energy provider. Lower Valley Energy has a 100% green power program. And so all of our on-mountain lifts, facilities, base area operations are run through this program. And the program directly sources wind power from the Horse Butte Wind Farm in neighboring Idaho. It's the closest wind energy source directly tied to Lower Valley's grid. So we made that move. It's expensive, but we thought that was a priority for us. And we have different teams across the company that are dedicated to continuing to advance our values. And so our green team every year identifies some initiatives that will further our pursuit to live that value.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And what might be the future for Jackson Hole as far as the renewable energy and environmentally friendly practices go?
Well, it will continue to be a priority. And I know it's a priority for Mike and Eric. And so we continue to look at the landscape. In the future, I'm not sure when, we look forward to being a user of nuclear power. And you probably know that there is an investment in Kemmerer City, Wyoming, named for the Kemmerer family. to build a nuclear power plant, and that will be the cleanest power around. And as a ski resort, we think that we should be a user of that power. So that is, I think, still 5 to 7 years out. I'm not quite sure when that will be coming online, but we have spoken with our Lower Valley Energy, our local resources here, and we think we'll be able to access that nuclear power through their grid.
Very cool. Thank you for that. And I drive through Kemmerer over a dozen times a year when I drive between Park City and Jackson. So I'll keep an eye on that development. So my last quick question here is around diversity. And my understanding is you're the first woman leader of Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. And I am so curious. We all know that the ski industry is a male dominated industry. What's it like being a powerful woman in this male dominated ski industry?
Well, first, yes, I am the 4th president in history and the first woman. I credit the Kemmerers for inviting me to join the board of directors in 2014. And that I would describe as forced diversity. They said that they wanted a woman's voice on the board. And so I was, I felt really fortunate to be selected for that. But I had the perspective from my prior roles at Disney and Nike. At Disney, when I was in Asia, I was one of 2 women on the senior management team of 14. At Nike, I was one of 2 female corporate officers. And during my time running Latin America, I was frequently in a position of being the only woman in the room. And so, my goal is really just to move through that introductory period of being one of just a few women in the room to my standout feature shouldn't be gender, but it should be I'm bringing the most innovative and compelling ideas to a room. And I think that really is the underlying philosophy of building diversity, that you bring different perspectives into a conversation, and those different perspectives can really strengthen ideas by subjecting them to different points of view. It's wonderful to watch as so many other women at different ski resorts, ascend to the top role, led by Kirsten Lynch at Vail. And I think Vail has just done a fantastic job of preparing women for top roles throughout their resort network. And it's wonderful to see Alterra and so many other resorts adapt that as well.
Yes, I love that because I think the percentage is quite low. Because I know there's Lindsay at the ski resort on the East Coast. I'm going to say it wrong. I'm going to say Bolton Valley.
Lindsay Delorier.
Lindsay Delorier, and I'd love to get her on this podcast. And then Dee Byrne at Palisades Tahoe in California, yourself, and I don't know of a lot of others. So I'm curious what the percentage is. I'm guessing it's below 10%. As leadership in ski resorts in the U.S., but I don't know those numbers. And then I guess this is a little bit of a bold question, but how does your board look right now as far as having women and diversity on your board at Jackson Hole?
Right now, our board, we are transitioning to a new board, but I was the only female board member in addition to Connie Kemmer. One of the owners was on our board.
Excellent. Are you able to share how many board members?
I think there were 9.
Okay, you have a big board. Okay, great. Thank you for some of that. The last question is, what does the ski industry need to do to help get more women into leadership roles?
I think give them a chance. I certainly was the product of forced diversity when I was put on the board of JHMR, but there was no forcing diversity into, the role that I'm in now as president. So I was given the chance to participate. I was given the chance to have a voice. And then I was given the chance for this job. But I think more than a chance, I think there has to be some deliberate focus and effort on developing women for leadership roles, ensuring that they are given experiences that can expand their skill sets so that they're prepared and can succeed when they are given those senior roles.
And I'm so glad it went the way it did because you're a very impressive, high IQ person. This has been really pleasurable to talk to you. And there's no doubt I don't think anybody's mind that different perspectives bring strength to teams and to leadership. So I really do hope that continues to amplify and echo throughout this industry. We need more diversity, and we need it to be in high places. So Mary Kate, that's all I've got for you today. Do you have any thoughts that you'd like to share here at the end of the show?
No, I just really appreciate you taking the time and interest, right? It's great to tell our story. I try and get out in the community as much as possible. When I was offered the opportunity to join the board of directors, I loved the opportunity because there were so many things that I wanted to change. And then when you really understand what it takes to operate a mountain resort and try and satisfy your very diverse group of employees and your guests, it's great to know what's going on and what's driving decisions and what the rationale is for how you make those decisions. So I appreciate you taking the time and me being able to share some of our thinking here at JHMR.
Well, you're very welcome. And one thing that I have learned in my experience, especially with my wife being a business leader, is people of color and women who make it to the top are even more competent and more powerful than their counterparts because their pathway has been so much more challenging. They've had to play the video game on the highest level when everybody else is playing essentially white men are playing the same video game on the lowest level. So I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your perspective, and really showing us, how interesting and complex and challenging all the facets are of running a ski resort, and how well that you're able to field that. So thank you so much, Mary Kate. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And let's try to go skiing this winter.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. And thank you again for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to the SnowBrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about SnowBrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at SnowBrains.
This episode of the SnowBrains podcast is brought to you by Club Med. Experience the ultimate ski getaway at Club Med, where every detail is meticulously taken care of. With their all-inclusive packages, you can focus on what you love most, skiing. With over 20 plus mountain resorts in the Alps, Japan, and Canada, enjoy world-class slopes, refreshing après-ski activities, and gourmet meals, all while knowing your accommodations, lift tickets, and childcare are all included. Let Club Med take the worry out of your ski vacation so you can simply relax and enjoy the ride. Visit www.clubmed.us. Call 1-800-CLUB-MED or call your travel advisor to plan your stress-free ski escape. This episode of the SnowBrains podcast was edited by Jared White and Ben Hout. Music by Chad Crouch. I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.